I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be talking about Scarlet by Marissa Meyers. This is the second book in the Lunar Chronicles series, so if you have not read this yet, go read Cinder, then go read this, and come back to hear my opinions. So I really loved this book. I liked Cinder pretty well, but this book was just so much more fast-paced. I was so much more engaged throughout it, and I didn't want to hide my head under a pillow while reading any parts of it, so that was good. I loved the pacing. I loved how it starts right out and you hear about Scarlet and you're jumping back and forth between Scarlet and Cinder, and then you get a little bit of Prince Kai's perspective thrown in there, and it was just so much fun to jump around like that, and I was way more invested in Cinder's story when it was mixed in with Scarlet's, so I loved that. Captain Thorn was awesome. I loved having all that snarky sense of humor in there, and I loved hearing him and Cinder banter back and forth. I also really liked it that you did not get a romantic vibe from them. They were two people, a male and female person, who were genuinely friends, and you don't see that too often in literature. Usually, when you're reading books, if there's a guy and a girl and they're stuck together and they're bantering and stuff, they're going to be love interests, but they weren't. They were genuinely friends who just had fun bantering back and forth and annoying each other, and I loved that so much about that. It was great to get all that snarky banter going and all that fun, playful, hey, look at us, we're gonna annoy each other a bunch kind of thing going without it having to be, oh my gosh, they have to date now because this is a book, and if two people have remotely interesting personalities, they must be soulmates. So that was really fun. I also found myself liking Cinder a lot more at the beginning of this book than I had at the end of the last one. I was very annoyed with the whole ball scene in the Cinder book. It seemed like it drug on for way too long and was way more embarrassing than it needed to be. And in real life, guards would have intervened before all this embarrassment could have happened and all this kind of time-wasting stuff went on. So I was kind of annoyed with Cinder by the end of her book. But in this one, it started out great. You just see her climbing through the prison cells, descending into Captain Thorn's cell, and she's on top of things, and she's annoyed and snarky, and it was just great, and I liked her so much more from the very beginning of this book to the end. I liked getting to see Aiko as the spaceship. That was really fun. I liked the farm that Scarlet lived on with her grandmother. It was fun to see that. And the thing that I liked most about Scarlet about the book Scarlet as compared to the book Cinder was that this one felt much more like the actual, it felt much more like the actual fairy tale it was based on. To me, Cinder was a fun book that had interesting plot points that happened to line up with Cinderella, but it didn't feel as much like this feeling I get when I think of Cinderella. And this to me felt like Little Red Riding Hood. You had that exact kind of feeling. I loved how they actually, legitimately, she was looking for her grandmother and they ended up wandering through the forest. And it made perfect sense. It made sense in the world they lived in. It worked with all the plot and everything, but they still had a good reason for being there, and it felt like Little Red Riding Hood. You had the sense of creeping through the forest and not knowing who to trust, and I really liked that. So I thought Scarlet was a very determined character. She started out from the very beginning. She was looking for her grandmother, and that was all she cared about, and that continued to be through pretty much the entire book until her grandmother died. And by that time she was still focused on her grandmother completely up until she was absolutely dead. But during that time, she had found some other things to care about, so that when her grandmother was gone, then she had some other things she wanted to do. Another thing I also really liked is that this story had a lot of tension built on the fact that Wolf wasn't always telling Scarlet the truth, you know, and that's very common in all kinds of stories, but usually someone has to get highly offended and say, "But you lied to me, how could you? Oh my goodness, how shall I go on? I don't know if I can forgive you. It's too late, something bad has happened. Well, now I know I should have forgiven you." And they didn't do that. Scarlet, of course, was mad at Wolf when she thought he had betrayed her. But then, when it became clear that he was conflicted, she didn't do the whole thing where she was mad at him until it was too late to forgive him. She just figured out, okay, I need you to get on this spaceship now, we can deal with this later. And they had a very mature conversation about it. And I just like that so much. We didn't have to deal with any of the petty drama that comes from people not talking to each other, not communicating properly. And I was dreading that petty drama so much, but we didn't have to worry about it because they were fine. They just got on their ship and sailed away and had an adult conversation. And funny how that works. Their problems were pretty much gone for those kinds of problems, at least. Not the whole, queen problems, but those problems were gone. And I loved all the train elements. I really like stories that take place, where they heroes are on a train trying to evade somebody and they have to jump on and off of trains, and that was really fun. The kind of the road tripping through Europe sort of vibe. I love travel stories like that where two characters are going on some kind of a trip and you're dealing with all the travel issues they have, jumping off of trains, jumping back onto trains, catching food, making fires, all that stuff. But at the same time, they're really just getting to know each other and you just get all these great conversations between them, and I loved that. Plus, this story had werewolves! I love the werewolf vibe. And I know technically these aren't actually werewolves, they're mutant hybrids of Lunars and wolves, but it had all the things that a good werewolf story should have, so I'm counting it as a werewolf story. Because you get that great sense of, oh, she's hanging out with this normal guy, but wait, he can smell who she's been with, and he can hear things she can't hear, and he seems to have these amazing wolf senses, and that's all the things you want in a werewolf story, so that was lots of fun. I really liked how all their stories came together at the end, and I was so nervous during that last scene when the two guys were unconscious and the two girls were, Scarlet and Cinder, were trying to get them onto the stupid spaceship, and I was sure that someone was going to be left behind and we were going to have to spend the next book trying to reunite the girls with their guys that they had lost, and everyone would have to be reunited in the next book. But that didn't happen. They managed to all get on board. That was so great. And they're ready for their next adventure, trying to prevent Prince Kai's marriage to the evil Lunar Queen. So I thought Scarlet was a great book. It was very fast-paced. I was invested in the story from start to finish, and now I can't wait to find out what happens in the next book. I can't wait to see what's going to happen to all these characters and meet Cress in her book. So I'm really looking forward to that.